Greetings, family. Dr. David Roots, the Roots Chemist, coming at you once again with some important teaching. I'm on my new platform allowing me to teach, which is really good, David Roots TV. A topic that's very dear to my heart. The topic of this video is the killer diet that black Bermudians love to eat. Okay? The killer diet that black Bermudians love to eat. I'm out here in nature. It's very hot, but it's beautiful. I have all of the crickets around me. We need to live as long as possible so we can enjoy nature, so that we can give to the world the unique downloads in our DNA that the Creator has endowed us with. So we need to live long in order to do that. But there's a killer diet that a lot of us love to eat. Okay, and I put Bermuda here on this on the presentation because that's where I'm from, and it's affecting people within my family, within my community. But this could easily, this presentation, refer to many of the other communities of people of African descent, okay, out there, whether it's in the UK, whether it's in the US, other parts of the Caribbean, South America, Africa, we all eat very similar things, okay? But it's killing us. This isn't revolutionary information. This isn't new information. This is just important information given to you from another platform, so that hopefully 1, 2, 10, 100 more people can be educated and change the way that they're eating, the way that their loved ones are eating, because it's killing us, okay? So why am I doing this particular video? So I'm going to use a PowerPoint to help me get through this information. Someone sent me a flyer of an event, okay? Just a flyer that the people sent out. And I looked at it, and immediately what came to mind is I need to do a video on this. Now, this is actually 2 flyers from 2 separate organizations of 2 separate events in my country. They could easily resemble flyers from other parts of the world, like the US, where people have fish fries, or they have what we call potlucks or cookouts, because we eat things that are similar. And if you look at the foods that are on offer from these events, the flyers, you can look down the bottom. Here it's list. Now, these flyers are 2 separate flyers, but the foods on offer basically are almost exactly the same. Okay, apologies, there's a plane flying over right now. So you can see on the menu on the left, there is fish, peas and rice. And look at the picture. When they say fish, they obviously mean fried fish, not baked fish, not steamed fish. Okay, boiled fish. They have fried fish, peas and rice, okay, which in Bermuda means white rice with black-eyed peas. Mac and cheese, which is macaroni and cheese, okay. Coleslaw is normally, which is made from coleslaw dressing and obviously cabbage. Beets, which is normally canned beets, and dessert, okay, which is probably some form of cake or ice cream or something like that. And on the right hand side, a whole separate flyer, okay, fish fry. It might as well be the same organization because they have the same things. Fish, you can see here, fish, peas and rice, mac and cheese, coleslaw, in this case 3-bean salad, which probably comes out of a big can, okay. And I looked at this on the one on the left, which was sent to me, and I said to myself, this is why people are dying in Bermuda, okay. Now, this is just for an event, maybe a Friday night fish fry, but the reality is this is how people eat all the time. Let me just check to make sure we're still recording. Okay, yep, still fine, still recording. So this is how people eat all the time, okay, on the weekends. And if they're not eating it at an event, they're gonna go and buy these things. Now, for those people that don't know Bermuda, some people might say, well, what's the Bermudian cuisine? All right. There is no such thing as Bermuda cuisine, okay? Sorry if you're offended, my fellow Bermudians, people who are local. There's no such thing as Bermuda cuisine. It's not like Jamaica, which has its own unique cuisine. It's not like, the southern United States, which has its own so-called unique cuisine, or Japan or Korea, or different parts of Africa. In Bermuda, there's no such thing. Okay, all the cuisine in Bermuda is borrowed. All right. So, for example, what are some things that people eat on a regular? And I listed them here: fried fish, baked chicken, fried chicken, macaroni and cheese, coleslaw, Spanish rice, which is basically white rice with tomato sauce in it, white rice, peas and rice, tossed salad, pasta salad, lots of pasta dishes, fettuccine, Alfredo, carbonara, different things like that, hamburgers, hot dogs, fried eggs, roast chicken for Sunday dinner, roast turkey, during the holiday times like Christmas, stuffing, roast potato. And then there's this list on the side that I put here of what many Bermudians might consider. They'll say, oh, we have our own cuisine. Things like what they call fish cakes, which they serve on on Good Friday. Hot cross buns. Sorry to tell you, Bermudians, that is not Bermuda cuisine. That's borrowed. Hence why in the UK, people eat fish during Good Friday. In Jamaica, they eat fish during Good Friday. That all comes from slavery time. That all comes from colonialism. It all comes from Christianity, where people ate fish due to Lent, and the hot cross buns because it's associated with Christianity. There's nothing Bermudian about that. Okay? Codfish and potatoes, maybe that's a very unique dish, but there's lots of evidence pointing to that dish was actually borrowed or adapted from some of the influences of the Portuguese community. Okay, the way we eat it is probably different. Okay, and things like Johnny bread, that's not Bermudian. There's no local idea of things like that. That's all borrowed. Okay, hence the fact that it's named Johnny bread will give you an idea. Now, yes, it might have become unique. The recipes might have become unique in the way that Bermudians do it, but all of these things, the majority of these things, have come from our time being under slavery and under colonialism by the British, which Bermuda unfortunately still is. Okay, and now we have adopted those things. The list on the left, as you can see, is mostly what people would associate with American diet. Okay, Bermuda is kind of right between America geographically and Britain. Okay, and culturally it has adopted a lot of American ways because they have a lot of American TV and very easy access to the States. And so that's also been reflected in their diet. Okay, so the point of this particular side is that there's no such thing as Bermuda cuisine. The cuisine and the foods that we're eating, okay, are borrowed foods, and they're the same things that are making those people we borrowed from, like the Americans, like the people in the UK, sick. Okay, they might be making us more sick because we probably eat more of it. Okay, so now that we've cleared that up, let's look to why these things are making us sick and how they are killing Bermudians. Okay, so everything I'm going to use in this presentation comes from reputable sources. I made a point of trying to find reputable sources. As I said, there's nothing new that I'm going to share. Okay, a quick Google search will tell you the same thing, but hopefully by sharing it I can enlighten and prompt some people to maybe make some changes. Okay, so let's first look at cancer. All right, if you ask about 10 random people, how many of them know somebody who's been affected by cancer? Out of those 10 random people, probably at least 3 or 4 will put their hand up. Okay, if not 9 or 10. Okay, in my own family, I've had several people who have been affected by cancer. Okay, and in Bermuda in general, cancer is very prevalent. Let's just put it that way, and we're going to look at some of the numbers a bit later. Okay, so let's just look at cancer as one of those things that is a cause of death in on the island right now, and how it relates to the diet. Okay, so what you see in front of you is a ring of the risk factors, okay, associated with cancer. Okay, and if we look at the ring, you can see here it says be a healthy weight, be physically active, eat a diet rich in whole grains, vegetables, fruits and beans, limit consumption of fast food and other processed foods high in fat, starches and sugar, limit consumption of red and processed meat, limit consumption of sugar sweetened drinks. Okay, and it goes on to some other things. Okay, and of course not smoking is high on that list as well, one of the most important things to prevent cancer. Okay, so how does this relate to the foods? Let's go quickly back to the foods that are being promoted and eaten in Bermuda. Okay, if you look at the cancer risk factors, immediately you can see a problem with the things that people are eating. It says limit consumption of fast foods and other processed foods high in fat, starches and sugar. So if you look here, what's high in fat, starches and sugar? Well, we have fried fish, which is going to be high in fat because it's fried. We have peas and rice, and mac and cheese, which is high in starches. Okay, the mac and cheese, the coleslaw, the beets and the dessert are high in sugar. So that's just one of the risk factors met alone. Okay, and if you also look down here in small writing, you probably cannot see it. It says following these recommendations is likely to reduce intakes of salt, saturated and trans fat, which together will help prevent other non-communicable diseases. Okay, so they're telling you what the main problems are. Okay, this also says to eat a diet rich in whole grains, vegetables, fruit and beans. Okay, so when we look at this menus, well, outside of the beets, which are in a preservative in a can, okay, with lots of sugar, okay, and over here we have some 3-bean salad. Sure, there are some vegetables included in this, but the problem is they're going to be soaked and saturated with different dressings that contain high fats and high sugars. Okay, so these foods that we talked about here are basically cancer causing, okay, or increase your risk factors for developing cancer. Why? They can lead to obesity. They're not rich in whole grains. Okay, as we said, there's a lot of white rice. There's not much vegetables, and the ones that are covered with very high amounts of fat and high amounts of sugar. Okay, which it says here. Okay, and it says limit consumption of red and processed meat. There wasn't any processed meat in those two examples, but that is also an issue as well. Okay, so cancer. Are the foods that are being eaten in high amounts in Bermuda going to increase the risk factor for cancer from what we see? Yes. Okay, and cancer is a killer. So let's move from cancer and let's look at cardiovascular disease. Okay, in other words, heart disease. And this comes from the World Heart Federation. Okay, you can go look all this up. This is on PowerPoint, but I just took the websites and I just print screened them and put them directly to the PowerPoint, so you can easily go and look them up yourself. So let's skim this very quickly. All right, what are some of the risk factors for cardiovascular disease? It says the role of diet is crucial, meaning extremely important in the development and the prevention of cardiovascular disease. A diet high in saturated fat increases the risk of heart disease and stroke. Okay, saturated fat, well, if you're frying fish, okay, if you're eating lots of cheese and lots of dairy, aka in the coleslaw, then that's going to be high in saturated fat. Okay, and it's estimated to cause about 31% of coronary heart disease and 11% of stroke worldwide. Okay, so we can already see, without even reading further, that the so-called Bermudian cuisine, the Bermudian diet, okay, is not only a risk factor, high in risk factors for cancer, but it's high in risk factors for cardiovascular disease. Okay, if we go a bit further down, it says here under fat, research makes it clear that abnormal blood lipid or fat levels have a strong correlation with the risk of coronary artery disease, heart attack, and coronary death. Okay, a diet high in these fats, example cheese, and trans fats, as we said, what? Desserts. Yeah, see, it says desserts. Okay, here, drinks, choice of water, soda or fruit juice, dessert, brownie. These are the things that are going to cause cardiovascular disease. Okay, strong correlation. It says a strong correlation and eventually can lead to death. Okay, and very quickly, because that slide not only said that diet is crucial in the development of the disease, but it's also important in the prevention of the disease. So what are they talking about? They're talking about here, how can we prevent the disease? Well, eat a diet high in fresh fruits and vegetables. It says fresh fruits and vegetables, not cooked fruits and vegetables. Okay, as well as whole grain cereals. Remember, I said peas and rice is white rice, it's not whole grain. Okay, and here it says fish. In countries where fish consumption is high, there is a reduced death from all causes. Okay, however, they're not talking about fried fish. Okay, they're talking about baked fish or steamed fish or boiled fish, okay, or even raw fish in the case of places like the Japanese. Okay, so far we've seen that the so-called Bermuda cuisine, the diet that people stick to and find enjoyable, not only has a high risk factors for cancer, but also now here for cardiovascular disease, and we've seen why. And a lot of it in this case is related to fat, okay, because that's what's going to clog up your arteries, okay. And in the cancer's perspective, it's relating to obesity, okay. In general, there is a link between obesity and the occurrence of cancer, as well as the chemicals that they put in processed meat. Okay, so let's keep going. So far we've looked at cancer and we've looked at obesity, okay. At heart disease, okay. And this just goes in a bit deeper. You can read up a bit more on this, but it's going to come in important a bit later. It talks about the connection between the fats that are in our blood, okay, and the fact that they are a risk factor for cardiovascular disease, in particular things like cholesterol, all right, and how these things can cause heart attack and stroke, all right, as well as high amounts of triglycerides. So this is going to be important because we're talking about cancer. We talked about cancer. We just talked about heart attacks or cardiovascular disease. I want you to remember this. Triglyceride, the other blood fat. Okay? So let's take a quick read. It says triglyceride is the most common type of body fat in the body. If you have heart disease or diabetes, you're likely to have high levels. Notice, heart disease or diabetes. Okay? So, what's the other one that's killing our people? Diabetes. You have cancer, which is killing our people. You have cardiovascular disease, which is killing our people. And you have diabetes, which is killing our people. Let's look at the connection between diabetes and the diet. So, what are the risk factors? Here, the first one at the top. You are more likely to develop type 2 diabetes if you are overweight or obese. Okay? Where's that coming from? From the fats. From the fats that people are eating. But there's also another connection. Okay? As well as if you are age 45 and older. Now this is coming from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, the National Institute of Diabetes. So this is a very strong source. So overweight or obese, age 45 or older. Here are the risk factors. Okay? Yes, it can be affected by genes and lifestyle. All right. However, you can change, it says, some of the risk factors such as eating, physical activity, and weight. Okay. Now, let's see the connection between these foods, all right, and diabetes, because as it said that for a long time people had this idea that the more sugars that you eat, okay, the higher prone you are to diabetes, okay? And that is true, but it's true for a specific reason, okay, that a lot of scientists are stressing now in the media in regards to what is the sugar, starch, fat connection. Because here you can see that it says the risk factor is being overweight or obese. Okay, it doesn't mention anything about sugars. Okay, so how are the two connected? Let's look at some information. Now, I purposely used some very simple information that even people in secondary school and high school are learning. Okay, so there's no excuse for those adults. Listen, these things are affecting people that I know now. Okay, men who are reaching their 30s and their 40s and are dying from things like having their limbs cut off, from things like diabetes, dying from heart attack, having issues like strokes, cancers. Okay, these things are affecting people now as adults. But even the young people are being taught these things. This is the information that's being taught to young people, so surely we shouldn't have an excuse. Okay, so let's look. What happens? What happens when you eat some of the things like what was on that particular flyer? Okay, let's say you go ahead, you have a meal, you eat your high levels of fat, okay, and that's gonna go ahead and be broken down in the body, and you're eating a lot of the starch, okay? So, when we eat starch, as most people will know, the starch molecule is quite large, okay? In order for it to be useful, it needs to be digested. The digestion starts within the mouth, with the enzymes in the mouth, as well as within the small intestine, okay? And it gets broken down, that starch, into glucose. So when we eat all of that rice, for example, all of the cake, the sugary drinks, the sugar beets, the beets that were there, okay, that starch and those sugars get converted into glucose, and those glucose enters the blood, okay, and then you can see here. So as the glucose enters the blood, here, high glucose, what happens? The pancreas secretes insulin, okay, and that glucose then is converted into what we call glycogen, okay? So that glycogen is important because what it is, it's a way of storing the excess glucose, because why do we need glucose? We can use glucose for energy. But you've gone home, you've had your fish fry Friday night, you've gone to the fish fry, then you go home and you turn on the TV and you lay down, you're feeling the itis kick in, okay? You're not active. Your body doesn't need all of that glucose that's now been put into the bloodstream. So what does it do? It has to store that glucose as glycogen, okay? So that glycogen is very important, all right? Because you can see here, all right, that let me just put this slide in the correct context. Sorry, I think I'm missing a slide. Yeah, I meant to put a slide in here on glycogen, okay? So anyway, glycogen is stored as fats, basically, okay? And these fats are stored within the liver and they're stored within the muscles. So there's a connection then between the amount of starches that you're eating and how it converts into sugars, as then there's sugars which you're not using because you don't have that level of activity, get stored as fat. Okay? And what did it say was a key issue in terms of causing diabetes? Being overweight or obese. Okay? And that's why you're not getting overweight or obese just from the amount of fried fish and the fats that you're eating, but the more important thing is that you're getting overweight and obese from the high amounts of starches and sugars that you're eating. And because those sugars are then being converted and stored as fats, and it's putting stress on things like the liver and making you insulin resistant, okay? So your body doesn't produce insulin like it normally should when you're eating those things. That is what is causing you to have diabetes. That is what's causing you to have an issue with your kidney, which is then leads to problems with the fluid transportation in your limbs, which then leads to things like amputation in your extremities, which starts mostly with the feet first. Okay? This has directly affected me because my grandmother, in fact, all of these have directly affected me and my family. My paternal grandmother, she suffered from diabetes and eventually had to go on dialysis, okay, and I believe lost one of her limbs. My grandfather, maternal grandfather, he suffered from a stroke. So these things are affecting us directly. Why? Because these are the foods that we are eating, the foods that are not good for us. Okay? So let's get a bit further with the connection between this diabetes, okay, and the fats and the starches that we're eating. All right? So remember earlier it talked about triglycerides, okay? I think it was here. The other blood fat, triglyceride. It says triglyceride is the most common type of fat in the body. We need triglycerides, okay? They say normal levels vary by age and sex. But if you have heart disease or diabetes, you're likely to have high levels of it, all right? So how does that relate to our conversation, all right? So if you look at triglycerides, okay, if you look down here, when we eat fats, which scientists call lipids, they are made up of what we call glycerol, okay, and fatty acids. The basic units of lipids is a triglyceride synthesized from glycerol and fatty acids. Okay, so these things that we're eating contain high amounts of triglycerides, which then are broken down, okay, these triglycerides, and the fatty acids have to be stored, okay? The fatty acids have to be stored. It says here, triglycerides formed between glycerol and unsaturated fatty acids are usually oils, okay? So those are triglycerides, so in other words, they're saying things that are normally in oil form, like plant-based fats, like your sunflower oils, your olive oils, okay? Those are glycerol and unsaturated fatty acids, meaning they have double bonds, they're not saturated. Whereas those formed with saturated acids are usually fats, meaning things like your lards, your butter, things like that, okay? So it's these triglycerides that also have to be broken down and get stored as fats. Why? Because as it said here, this is most common type of fat. We need it. However, if you have too much of it, high levels of triglycerides, this will speed up and cause an increased risk for heart attack and for strokes. Okay? Heart attacks and for strokes, as well as lead to issues like diabetes, because as it says, the fatter you are, the more overweight you are, and if you have a history of heart disease or stroke or a high level of triglycerides, that will also lead to type 2 diabetes. Now, do you see a commonality, a common factor in all of these diseases? Okay? Cancer, healthy weight, foods. Heart disease, fat, meaning being a healthy weight, foods. Diabetes, weight and foods. It is the foods that we're eating that is killing us. That's it. It's the foods. Yes, there are other things that we are not doing, such as exercise, that could help us. But if you've still got all these other risk factors, even if you're exercising and this is what your diet looks like, you're still going to have high risk factors for cancer, diabetes, and heart disease, and that's what's killing us. Let's look at some statistics and then we can close out. This came from 2017. This is for Bermuda, like I said, but you can go and do the research for your own country. And this is from the Ministry of Health. It's a bit squashed there. The government of Bermuda. Okay? This is from the actual government, the Ministry of Health. It says Health in Review 2017. Table 2.2.1. Causes of mortality, meaning death, ranked by percent of deaths for the total population from 2006 to 2015. That's 10 years. Okay, and it's ranked in order. Okay, in hierarchical order, in numerical order. And what's at the top? Diseases of the circulatory system, meaning cardiovascular disease, cancer, diseases of the respiratory system, okay, and endocrine, nutritional, and metabolic disease, including diabetes. Okay, so of the top 4 things, with the 2 major things being heart disease, cancers, and diabetes, which is 7.1, should be higher than the 4.8% here. Okay. They also have something on here with Alzheimer's, which is at 9%. So this is statistical facts showing you that not only just for 2015, but for the past 10 years, basically, those 2, cancer and cardiovascular disease, okay, as well as diabetes, are some of the main causes of mortality in Bermuda. And the reality is that what's the risk factors? This is from that same report. The risk factors are, it says here, risk factors and related conditions: being overweight, being obese, okay, as well as the foods that people are eating. So all of these things that are causing the major causes of death, people are dying prematurely in Bermuda, in the United States, in the US, particularly people of color, people of African descent, black people. Why? Because of this killer diet that we continue to eat, this so-called Bermuda cuisine or soul food, or whatever other types of little labels we want to give it that make it sound good. Yes, it tastes good, okay, but it's killing us. And all of these things can be cooked in ways that taste just as good, but there are alternatives so that they don't end up having the high levels of fats and starches. Now, if my presentation wasn't enough, and I'm going to end with this, like I said, this is nothing revolutionary. There are a lot of people talking about this, okay? You can even just look at some. I just chose 3. There are 3 TED Talks which are very powerful. We don't have time to listen to them. Dr. Neil Barnard, this scientist has done so much research, okay, on how to prevent diabetes and how he's treating diabetes, type 2 diabetes, and actually curing people and getting them off insulin when the doctors told them he couldn't do it. He gives actual statistics, and you can see the title of the video if you want to go watch it yourself, okay? This next scientist, Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn, okay? He talks about cardiovascular disease. How does he do it? How does he help people? He just changes the diet. Go and listen to him, okay? He had people come to him who his doctors were saying, we need to operate on you. And he said, hold on, let me try to use my techniques of diet. And then they go back to the doctor, and the doctor says they don't have that issue anymore of cardiovascular disease. And then how about cancer? The big one. The one that people say, you know, now I'm not a doctor, okay? At least I'm not a medical doctor. This is just information, but it's not my information. These are scientists saying this. This lady here, Dr. Gellert Goldfarb, she talks about her own experience with cancer and how she healed herself from cancer. And she talks about what the ideal diet is. And she just doesn't give conjecture. She gives archaeological and anthropological evidence as to what she suggests as the ideal diet. All right? And you know it doesn't contain things like this. It contains the things that what we'll end with, which is here, the fruit and vegetable consumption. If you want to heal yourself from these diseases and heal our community, our family members who are dying from these diseases, people in their teens are now suffering from things like cancer, heart disease, and diabetes. We need to change the way we are eating. Okay, family? This is Dr. David Roots, the Roots Chemist. I hope you enjoyed this presentation. More to come. Give thanks.